You have dreams, aspirations. You want to become a Navy SEAL? But if you fail, you end up in the deck department as a undesignated, lowly deck seaman. And that's what happened to this Navy SEAL buds drop failure, which decided to burn that ship to the ground. But we'll talk about that as new chilling details have come out detailing some of the exact moments before this happened, and also some red flags that they found as his identity was not known previously. Now, this does look like it's a sailor, 20-year-old Ryan Sawyer Mays, which has been under the suspicion and under the limelight of this, as many details have come out from people that are on the ship talking about it, and it looks like there's been more coming to surface as news resources and articles are now getting more and more information that the Navy did not want to officially publish. Before we move into any part of the story, to understand the basics of what has happened, July of last year around this time, the Bonhomme Richard was up in a blaze, and essentially nobody really knew what happened, why it happened, and really the Navy was kept quiet as they gathered information, and they were scrapping the ship altogether as they looked at different ways that they can move forward, whether that was repairing the ship, whether that was turning it into something else, or whether that meant just getting rid of it, whatever that was. But it looks like they went with getting rid of it, which is still going to be about $30 million. And the ship itself looks like it's between $1 and $2 billion that would be up in a blaze from this. But there's further details on Ryan Mays and some of the stuff that happened before this event. Yahoo News cites saying that Mays was identified by NCIS investigators after they interviewed some 177 sailors assigned to the Bonhomme Richard. One reported that he had seen a quotations light-skinned male in clean coveralls and a face mask carrying a metal bucket into the lower V, the ship's aft section, but didn't recognize the person in question. But later the sailor named in the search warrant affidavit as Kenji Velasco did mention a sailor named Mays that quotations hates the U.S. Navy and the fleet, the filing states. In further interviews, Velasco said he was, quotations, fairly sure and, quotations, 90% sure. He saw Mays descend into the lower V before the fire broke out. He also noted that firefighting equipment in the area seemed to have been tampered with. Now, obviously, when he testifies, this statement is going to have to be consistent. If he's talking about 90% correct, there is a shadow of doubt, as this is going to go up way further into a courtroom setting where they're going to have to prove that this person, beyond a reasonable doubt, was actually the person that was there when you're talking about something that is a crime of this magnitude. Velasco further explained that in the hours and days after the fire, it had dawned on him that the individual who descended to the lower V at 0805 on the day of the fire was Mays' height and build, had fair hair that could be seen coming out of his cover, like Mays, sounded like Mays, and said, "I love deck," which is an expression Velasco knew Mays to say. The affidavit says, adding that other sailors had also suggested that to investigators that the person in question seemed to be Mays based on his clothing and language, and that the command master chief identified Mays as a person who showed disdain towards authority and the U.S. Navy. Now, to give context here, yes, it does look like he was trying to be a Navy SEAL at one point, where he ended up in the deck department. And for some of you guys that don't understand the context of this, there is a position in the U.S. Navy that is deemed undesignated, which typically gets you put in the deck department. This means maintaining and making the outside of the ship look pretty and also functional, and doing several other tasks as well. It is known to be very manual labor and known to be very undesirable position within the U.S. Navy, as you don't officially have a true job until you actually go to an A school, which is for their technical training, or maybe getting into another job where you test into it to advance to the third class petty officer E4 rank. So this level of disdain is known across the fleet, as essentially people that don't make it to buds have the chance to end up at this position, and then they get pissed off. They'll say that mental health is a reason, or they'll try and get out of their contract, whichever way possible, because they forget, and a lot of people that are joining do forget, is when you come into the military, you sign that contract, they say they're going to send you that training, but that doesn't mean if you don't pass it, oh yeah, see you later, that's it. No, they could still use you. You have signed on to be a U.S. Navy sailor, not just you're going to go be a buds person that, failed out and gets to try a million times until your contract's up. The Navy eventually has to get their dollar out of you. So that's why I always advise people, it might be better off to join the Navy, get a specific job, make sure you have that training behind your belt. And that way, if you do fail out of buds, you have something to fall back onto, and you don't fall into this undesignated spot where most Navy SEALs, or I should say some Navy SEALs, find themselves very troubled and disgruntled in. It goes on to say, investigators reviewed Mays' now private Instagram account and found a post that stated, quotations, "I love the smell of napalm in the morning." The affidavit explains, Mays' service records showed that he joined the Navy in 2019 with the intent on becoming trained in the advanced electronics computer fields, then changed his career goals to become a Navy SEAL, but 5 days after beginning Navy SEAL training, Mays dropped out and was reassigned to the Bonhomme Richard as an undesignated seaman. According to the Navy leadership, the morale and behavior of sailors who had aspired to become a SEAL and then find themselves serving in a more traditional role on the Navy ship are frequently very challenging, the affidavit says. Mays told investigators he was willing to take a polygraph exam, after which he was arrested. Mays is said to have then incriminated himself in the presence of 2 Master at Arms designated sailors who heard Mays say, unasked, that he was guilty, seemingly talking to himself. According to the warrant, he later denied ever making the comments and denied involvement in the arson, claiming he was being set up. Again, you're looking at this. If you have this member that Velasco that was out here saying that he remembers seeing him 90% sure, right? There's 10% doubt there if that's going to be on record. Then you look at this where he says that he was guilty, and then he comes back later on and says he wasn't guilty and is being framed. And then you have to say, why would these Master Arms lie about it on a case that's this big? They don't even know this guy. So I just have to say there's a lot of wishy-washy where this is going to come down to the fine details, and I am curious what type of evidence actually comes from this case, as none of that has been released so far. Investigators also dug into Mays' personal life and discovered several red flags. After telling investigators during an initial 10-hour interview that he'd recently separated from a female sailor upon discovering that she was pregnant and he was not the father, investigators later learned this was mostly contradicted by the female sailor in question, the warrant said. The sailor recounted to investigators that while Mays had gone around telling everyone she was pregnant and that he was, quotations, going to be the father, she had never been pregnant and had made that clear to him, even taking a pregnancy test to prove it. That sounds like a red flag of mental health type issues. I'm not going to diagnose anybody or speculate on that, but it just definitely sounds like it from this. Like, why would this kid, run around saying that he's the baby daddy to this girl that's not even pregnant? Like, it makes you want to be like, dude, are you totally there? It's crazy because you don't realize like what this kid could actually be going through or what's actually going on in his head. I mean, I always say this every time. We can't screen every single person at MEP. We can't spend that money to have a mental evaluation on every single person. It's just too taxing on the system. So, and especially once someone's gone through this kind of trials and tribulations, it's one of those things where maybe that situation, that adjustment might be the reason why he's kind of gone down this path. Now, from this information that has been released, this is also very key in regards to physical evidence that has been noted or released, or I should say identified by news sources right now. It was not clear if that series of events was thought to have pushed Mays toward the alleged arson. NCIS investigators seized Mays' iPhone, searched his car and apartment, and swabbed his cheek for a DNA sample. So far, Mays' DNA has not been a match for DNA found at the scene. That would honestly make sense as to why the U.S. Navy would not tie his name exactly to this case, as it's maybe not a slam dunk yet. There's a lot of parts of this just in what's being released on a day-to-day basis, as you can see in comparison to my last video, where there was no information coming out about this. And obviously, I do agree that we should have due process and allow this person to get their day in court, and that's where this is going to come to. But I'd love to know if you guys are on the ship too, and if you might have information. Again, everything's anonymous, and I'm not taking anything as verified sources until I see other stuff come out, but it would be nice to kind of hear some background story to make sure what we're covering on this channel is up to date or the best it can be. But as always, if you guys do appreciate what we do on this channel, we do have a Patreon link down below this video where you can help support for some special perks and benefits. Also, on top of that, there's a YouTube join button below this video as well, where you can get some special perks and benefits there as well. But as always, if you have questions about this or anything else, you can always hit me up on Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, down in the comments below. I love you guys. I'll see you next time.